Hey guys, it's Annie with Salttown Realty. It's actually not the third Thursday of the month. I was in a work conference last week, and so I've just decided to do third Thursdays on this fourth Thursday. So today we have Cody Johnson. He's with Raymond James, and he is a financial advisor who is amazing. And we're going to get him on here to talk about finances. So he's going to join us here in just 1 second. And I hope you guys have your questions ready because this is just such a good one to ask your questions. And if you don't have questions about your finances, then you need to be thinking more about your life. Yay! Hi, Cody. So this is Cody Johnson. He's with Raymond James. He's my personal financial advisor, so I don't know if that's like too much nepotism or something, but he's been great. I've been working with him for years. He lives here in Salt Lake City. He's an outdoors person like myself and most of the rest of you. And so welcome, Cody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Be here.
Yeah. So why don't you give us like a little bit of background? Like, how did you get into this? How long have you been doing it? Give us the rundown of where you come from.
Yeah, sure. Well, I got into it just, I think, because of a culmination of things that I had heard and observed as a young man, and then also lessons I kind of learned growing up about money, or the lack thereof. I grew up in a house that didn't have much experience with money. Both parents were class in a sense, and I aspired to understand money more, was curious about it, wanted a way of life that would allow me to help other people have something different to do. And then through exploring a bunch of avenues in college, not land specific, stuck with the general business path for education. And then just through meeting people, found myself curious about this again, and then plugged into my first kind of career position at 25. This was it. I've been doing this age 25, 20 years now. And iterations of my interests have ebbed and flowed, but in the end, the thing that really has made it interesting and fun for me is the fact that everyone is dancing with money every day, and everyone has questions about it, and it's fun to be a part of their life that way.
Yeah. I knew a lot of that, but I don't think I knew that you started when you were 25. That's probably a lot like starting real estate. There's a lot of agents that start when they're 20, 22, 25, whatever, and it's hard to get a start when you're that age because you have to really convince people that you know what you're talking about. So,
yeah, it's a challenge. Things that in the various forms of training and licensing you go through, they know you come out with this sense of intimidation that I'm young too, and the parties that train you say, hey, keep in mind, you know more than 99% of the people you'll meet, even though you don't know everything yet. You're still a huge resource, and then you grow into understanding more about the things people need to know. You most do understand enough to help there. So yeah.
And I bet it's like real estate, and that like when I first started, I wasn't 25 when I started, but you kind of surround yourself with people that know more things than you do. And so you're able to go, hey, like, I don't have the answer to that question right now, but you have the resources and you know what to ask to be able to find the answers to those questions anyway. More so than the person that you're probably working with. They don't know who to trust or who to ask, especially in our days of the internet with all the answers, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's even through clients, sometimes you meet those people who help you learn more. So as you gain clients, you meet their CPAs, their attorneys, their real estate professionals, their mortgage, and you build this network of people that then become an additional source of knowledge and information.
Yeah, exactly.
Network of knowledge. Yeah.
I'm always like, I don't know if you're like this with your clients, but I'm always like, don't call anybody before you call me. Call me first. I have all the people. If you don't like my people, then that's fine. But please just call me first before you call anybody else. Because, yeah, you definitely get like this whole network of people that are in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I had an experience last week that's nothing to do with the network of people, but some tired got a phone call that the computer was compromised and they had to call and get access to support. You've probably heard the scam, right? And more my clients who are anywhere from accumulation years in their 30s and 40s and 50s to retirees are not only getting, bad information from professionals that aren't quite far, but they're getting more and more email and phone calls about scams through banking and other kind of, fraudulent activities. So last week I learned learned the lesson again through a client experience that call me, please call me, and just.
I had a very similar thing last week where I was like, oh, call me first, please. So I like that term that you just used, the accumulation years. So to start our conversation on, investing, I'm a real estate agent, so I think that people should invest their money in real estate. But there's a pathway to get there, to save up the money that you need to buy a house. And then after you buy the house, then there's a pathway of like, now what do I do? Am I going to continue to invest my money, in a brokerage account, stocks, or am I going to buy more real estate, or maybe a little bit of both? And so I kind of like to take us through sort of a potential timeline. Like, a lot of my clients are probably in their maybe mid to late 20s, which is amazing and shocking to me all the time that people that age are able to buy houses right now. I think that there's so much, so many people that are saying that that's just not possible, and it totally is possible. So I kind of want to talk about like a timeline. So because this is a real estate channel, I want to talk about if you're saving up to buy a home, what are some things that people can know? Like, what are some ways that people can invest? Because obviously they're not just going to obviously they're not going to just put their money into like their checking account until they have $20,000, right? So, no, I'm not surprised. I know that that's a thing. But why don't you take us through like some ways of investing? And I want to talk about liquidity and non-liquidity, some things like that. Just give us like kind of a brief overview on like, how do we use our money to benefit us?
Yeah. So I guess I'll zoom out a bit. So I work with money, but also am a financial planner. So sometimes there's not money, right? Yeah. And sometimes it's let's just make sure you don't pick up unhealthy debt. Don't end up with debt that's high interest that's going to start to circle you and hold you back. There's the conversation of keep some money in the bank. Before you call me, I want you to have months of expenses, because if you or your partner lose work, you're probably not home anyway, and this will protect you from other things that you want to still be able to do. But once people have that solid foundation, healthy levels of debt or healthy types of debt, right? Because auto loans sometimes happen or school loans happen, but avoiding consumer debt is critical for the loan application process too, I'm sure, which I'm not a mortgage. I can't say too much there. But yeah, once you get that good foundation set, the answer to that question of what's a good way to keep liquidity but build savings has really changed in the last year. Prior to this year, or I say the last 12 months, there wasn't a lot you could do to earn money and be liquid. Interest rates were so low. Created an opportunity in your market for sure, more buyers because rates were lower, affordability was there. And right now we've inverted that. Now, it's not as affordable to have a mortgage, but cash solutions are pretty enticing.
Yeah.
So before it was, you can buy CDs, you can use money market accounts, and you can use cash accounts. Those things are still there today. Those are still some go-to solutions for being liquid. But today you can get, 5.3% on money market accounts, 4.5% to 5.5% on CDs. And those, like the money market accounts or like our product here, the Enhanced Savings Program, are truly liquid. You can get the money back very quickly. There's no term, no penalty. So it's a really good time for people right now in that regard. But unfortunately, right, while you were earning less than 1% before, but get a mortgage at 3%, now you're 5%, but your mortgage is at what, 7.5?
Yeah. Oh, I love that perspective though. Yeah.
Sides rose together.
Right.
But yeah, there's also, of course, so many types of investments outside of cash, money market, and CDs when you get into different types of bonds or debt instruments where you loan your money to someone else of high credit quality and receive from it. But the most common I'd speak to for someone striving to buy a home would be those money market and CD type instruments, because it's typically something they're trying to do soon. But if they said it's a 7 to 10 year time frame, then you start to broaden the spectrum of investments and take on more risk. So that's a.
So let's talk about, let's again zoom out a little bit. Let's talk about a money market account. Why don't you give us like a very brief explanation of what a money market account is, and then different ways that people can utilize that.
Yeah, sure. So a money market is at a basic level a form of a mutual fund, which kind of requires its own explanation itself. Mm-hmm. A mutual fund is a packaged security or an investment company. So picture a box, right? But you fill the box with different things that have a function. mutual funds as a whole can be stocks or bonds or stocks and bonds or other instruments. And in the case of a money market, it's still that same container, that box, but inside it are just very short-term debt instruments, loans that the money manager of that mutual fund make to institutions for very short time frames at competitive rates, such as 5 to 6% right now. And then we, the consumers, the buyers of those things, benefit from the loans the managers are making. And so that fund provides us with that 5 to 6% rate of return. But because those instruments inside the money market mutual fund are very short term in nature, as the Fed changes rates, you see the rate change quite a bit.
Right.
So that's last year, money market rates went from not appealing to hard to resist, because those short term rates react instantly and consumers can benefit from while they're there. But you're not locking them in for 3, 5, or 10 years. It's
Right.
just they're available, so it tends to turn over every few days to a week.
So because of that, you're able to pull that money out more effectively. Like if the right property hit the market, you'd be able to pull that out. Whereas some of these other investments, what is the penalty? So if you do enter into one of those ones that's 3 or 5 or more years long, why can't you have your money at that point?
Well, so that question has a lot of different angles to answer that come to do with fees. The more complex a mutual fund is in terms of building a bond ladder full of different credit qualities of bonds, people have to put time into it, secure them, and then liquidity comes into play too. Can you get the price that someone paid for the instrument inside versus those very, very liquid short-term instruments? So liquidity and fees come into play. Now you can structure things that have a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year maturity on average inside. You can structure it in a way where you're not paying fees to get it or get out, but you might be paying more month to month to have it managed. And generally speaking, the shorter the term someone's goal is and the they want to be, the more we try to prevent them from having higher fees or more complex products that can change in price. So last year we saw bonds, the bond market as a whole. If you just look at intermediate bonds, meaning kind of medium term, say 7 to 10 year bonds, they were down 13% last year. And I don't want to come to me and say, hey, I want to buy a house in a year. And I say, cool, are you okay? You back, 87 cents on the dollar. So we try to back away from those things, and those short-term instruments both create liquidity and safety.
Yeah. I mean, and that's basically what happened with me, because I bought a house last year, and I think that's the exact advice you gave me. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about, before buying a house, there's probably a timeline. If somebody's like a year out from buying a house or 6 months from buying a house and they want to be invested in something that's like liquid, like you're talking about. In this current market, it's interesting because you're saying that these money market accounts can get people 5 or 6% back. So if somebody is, I think in real estate, people are always trying to time the market, which is basically impossible, right? And everybody who knows me knows I'm of the mindset that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is today, and the same goes for real estate. So if you're sitting there thinking maybe I'll buy a house, you want to have it in that short-term investment. Now let's fast forward to you have already bought the house and you have spent your $30,000, $40,000 that you've had in either kind of long-term investments or maybe the short-term investments, and you've bought the house. Now what? Now does all your money just go into that long-term, you can't get your money out investment? What's the next step after that?
Sure. And before I answer that question, I'm going to back up just a little bit and point out, or I guess clarify something. I know not everyone's looking to buy a house the next 6 to 12 months. And so short term may not be so short term. For example, a college grad at 20 might want to travel the world for a couple of years and save up money and buy a home at 30. That becomes a 7 to 10 year time frame. Think of the choice you have as a sliding scale between low risk and high risk. The longer the term your timeline is, your goal, the more risk you can take because you can recover from a downturn, right? Like last year, the stock market was down. If you stayed invested, this year it's up. Okay. Sometimes that takes 3 or 4 years if you have a couple of dips in there. So just to, I guess, clarify my statement, there's most of the time for liquidity purposes and safety, those money market CDs are great for people nearing purchase, but about 10 years, then you do need to, in order to be prudent with your money, take on some risk because surely in that time frame, interest rates will change and your money will become idle. So you engage risk appropriately. according to that time frame. But yeah, and to recap the next question, you said once you're in the house,
Yeah.
and the new chapter of life begins, what changes? Is that the essence of it?
Yeah, I think that's what changes. Although I kind of want to go back to your clarification question. This is what always happens. I go, these are the questions I'm going to ask, and then I end up just like all over the place asking other questions. No, I like the idea of, you're saying the difference between timeline of investment and risk, and people thinking about it that way. And just to plug, just so everyone knows, Cody's not looking for new clients, but if you were to engage a, financial planner, this is why I personally have gone the route of going with a professional, because I'm not constantly thinking about the market. I'm not constantly thinking about my goals and like how my goals are interacting with the market. And so we just had a meeting the other day that was exactly that. Like, hey, have your goals changed? The market has changed. How do you want to kind of react to that so that you're maintaining either, slightly fluctuating levels of risk or maintaining the same risk given the market? And so I guess it's just a plug for doing things with a professional so that you can kind of explore that. I think that if I just had like an account with, name one of the people you can have an account with, Vanguard or something.
Schwab.
Yeah, like you've just got an account online and you've got your money and you're like, okay, this is how my money's invested. It's like you have to go in there and interact with it to like try to make it do what you want so that your money's working for you. So anyway, it's just kind of like a plug of the benefits of working with a professional in that regard, because a lot of my clients are asking me like, should we just throw our money into Vanguard or whatever, or should we work with somebody? And I always say work with somebody for that reason, because it's so fluctuating.
It's a lot. There's a lot out there to navigate and decide upon.
Yeah.
And
then like so many of my clients maybe, buy their house as a single person, and heads up, any single guy or gal that buys a house instantly ends up finding a partner and having babies and doing all the things. And so suddenly your goals and your outlook and everything changes. So again, just kind of riding that tide. So yeah, so to go into my next question, you've now bought the house. You want to keep some money in an account for the house in case your furnace goes out or whatever. How should people be thinking then about their investments after the house?
Yeah, so I'm going to double back to that whole time frame thing again. So some things in our lives happen sooner than later. For example, I had kids before, right? So we kind of help people in this business and the financial planning business identify what they're trying to manage for, what they're trying to achieve. Sometimes that's preparing to have kids. Sometimes that's remodeling the house that they just bought. Sometimes it's the next property they want to buy that can be a rental property. There's all kinds of things that do come up, but all of them have time frames. And so once again, we try to match people's time frame to risk, tax situation to the outcome, because some things can be muddled and slowed down quite a bit by poor tax planning. And then also balancing life today with life tomorrow, because again, some things are happening right now and the money just stays in our checking and savings. Some is 6 months out, 18 months, 24, and 40 years. So it's really about helping people understand what might happen if they buy some type of security and what type of account is best to buy based on their purpose. So college savings plans are great for college. Retirement account types vary from 401ks and 401as and 403bs and IRAs and Roth IRAs and simples and SEPs. And just try to help people understand what fits them to make their purpose most achievable. And the most common things are just the things we think about in life that I've gone through. I got married, I bought a house, I moved state to state and had to buy a different house. I had kids, I started college funds. I got divorced, I lost some money, I had to rebuild again. I started a business, so I went from a 401k to a SEP. And all those changes, when you take time to ask what's changed in my financial picture, right? Well, then you'll find answers. But if you don't stop to ask, life's changed, but you may not have changed your financial picture to complement it. So every one of those occasions really does bring in a different decision.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And again, just another plug for working with a professional so that you can constantly be kind of reviewing and making sure that, like, all of our efforts, everybody's working hard. They're going to work, earning all this money, trying to make it work for them as much as they can. And yeah, let's be efficient with that. That's the plug.
I'm moving because the sun's moving.
I know, as the sun is, I can see it shining in your eyes there. So I loved the actually how you started this whole thing of the importance of, avoiding debt, particularly consumer debt, which is credit card debt, right?
Yeah.
And of course, people are always going to have debt on their homes and probably on their cars. Is there any other just like general advice you would give to people in terms of like what they should be saving a month, what their goals should be if they're, I guess, any age? It's very vague.
Yeah. So the most, and you mentioned your typical customer, or at least the bulk, I guess, are in that roughly age 30 mark. I would say just save as much as you can as early as you can. I wish I had some kind of whiteboard to show you guys a basic demonstration of my favorite explanation of the power of compounded money. And that is just to show if someone were to save $10,000 per year, which can be challenging, but can also be very doable if you're focused on it. If you save $100,000 by the time you're 30, so $10,000 a year from 20 to 30, and then you stop, that money can double, right? From 30 to 40 to 200, from 40 to 50 to 4, from 50 to 60 to 8. And then that final 10-year period from 60 to 70, when people are more often retiring now, that 800,000 compounds to 1.6 million, okay? And when you stop and think about what you're actually losing by delaying a good savings habit, you're losing your first 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really losing time later, but you're losing the savings in the first 10. And what that computes to is losing the last compounding period, because now you're going to save 100 by 40.
Right.
So when you dump from 60 to 70, you're going from 4 to 8, not to 8 to 1.6.
Yeah.
And you can't go back and say, I want to be 20 again so I can save better, right? I've got lots of things I wish I'd do differently at 20. But saving when you're in your 20s to get a meaningful balance that you leave and don't touch, so it can compound and work for you, you don't have to be brilliant and choose the right stocks.
Yeah.
Right? But you're just doing yourself a favor by giving a chunk of money an opportunity to grow, much like if you were to, skin up to the top of a pass in the Wasatch Mountains and pack a snowball and roll it down. It's going to be bigger if you start at the top than if you start in the middle.
Yeah.
There's a very reason why. The compaction, the weight, right? It has more inertia and more time.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, though, is just start as early as you can, because the more compounding periods, which tend to be between 7 and 10 years, that you give yourself, the more the money's working for you, as opposed to having to say later in life, all right, we're $800,000 behind our neighbors here who did it the other way. We got to save more out of our pocket.
Yep.
We got to work more. We got to cut out some expenses to save that money out of pocket. Instead, it's just doing the work for you. So that's the main thing I'd say. As far as the savings rate, obviously it's also true. If you start when you're 20, you might be fine saving 7 to 10% per year. If you're starting when you're 50, that same 7 to 10% is not going to work unless you're saving a much larger amount per out of a salary, for example. But in general, you'll hear or see, if you look online, 10, 12% is what people should save. The honest answer is there isn't a number until you do a plan.
Yeah.
And say, this is how long I have. This is the type of risk I'm going to take with the money I do save. And this is when I'll use it. That's when you find your number. But going back to compounding period, we use the rule of 72. It's very basic. You take 72 divided by the rate of return you expect to earn, and that tells you how long it'll take to double your money. So you take 72 divided by 10 to 7.2 years to double 100,000 to 2. You take 72 divided by 7.2, it's 10 years. Divided by a smaller number, it's even longer. So again, that number, how much you save per year, it's related to how you invest and the rate of return you get and how long it will be invested. So we love to have simple answers to put in articles and put them online, but the answer is you got to sit down and do a plan. What your own number is.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's a really good, if somebody is, invested without utilizing a professional, somebody's got $50,000, $60,000 in a high yield savings account type of thing. Now suddenly they can use that equation to kind of figure out, okay, where am I going to be by the time I retire or whatever. And that is like the criminality of our education system, right? Like I told you, I think the other day that I went in when I was 22 or something to start a little IRA. And the guy was like, well, I mean, it's pretty good, but you should have started earlier. And I'm like, earlier? I'm 23 years old, but he meant like 18, 16, 15, you know, and that's just not, so I would say that the majority of people, you know, don't start even thinking about this stuff until they're 30, unless they grew up, like I grew up with a grandfather that hammered a lot of it into me. But yeah, most people don't even start to think about it. And I have plenty of 35-year-olds that go, you just sold a house to a 26-year-old? And I go, yeah, they probably had the benefit of somebody telling them, like, save your money.
Absolutely.
Or they have the benefit of somebody just giving them their money, which is fine. And something that happens also. So, yeah.
No, you're right. It's something I've thought about a lot as I've got kids in school now, and I recognize that they aren't learning about money at all. And of course, we talk about it. I've got a bit of a unique house that way. We talk about money, of course, because it's part of my day. But yeah, hearing from my son who's in high school now about how little exposure there is to general concepts.
Yeah.
It's not surprising, given that we have a keen awareness in our country that we have a problem with financial education and savings rates and debt. Yet we don't seem compelled to find a solution for it.
Yeah, it's unreal. Well, we're almost at a half an hour here. So any last words of wisdom that you want to give to people? And I don't have any questions yet. We've got quite a few people watching right now. If anybody has any questions, you can shout them out. But otherwise, any last final words of?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing I'd say is I know this is a very broad and intimidating topic, investments and savings. Just the sheer number of account types, the sheer number of securities to choose from, and then also the way it's marketed. People get a lot of very intimidating information. I would just encourage you to find someone that you feel safe asking questions of and learn if you haven't already dug in. Because it can be an intimidating place to start to get exposure to. And I will also say, and I appreciate you kindly mentioning that my workload is a little higher than I would like right now. I do have someone in the office working with me, Kelly Holtman, who's helping me run the office. And when opportunities come up where we can help someone, I'm often having her start that introduction and work with her and then consult with me as needed. So while I'm not very available right now, she is, and I'm trying to keep my office built in a way that we can always, you know, have a welcoming hand when someone calls and says my friend or neighbor needs some help. So people do have questions. I want them to know we are a place you can call and ask questions. But that's the main thing. Don't get intimidated away from doing the things you need to do to make your retirement or your goals work. Just find someone that you feel safe asking questions of and someone who can give you answers that you can put to work and understand.
I will say, like, I'm such a kind of weirdo about all of the finance stuff, and I have a really hard time following it and understanding it as well. But I have finance guys, the guys at the bank, reach out to me all the time, and they go, we want to do a free consult with you. And so I go, utilize every single free consult that you can find. You know, there's all these computer programs, you guys type in all the information and it gives you this whole analysis. And so even if you think, don't do this to Cody, but even if you think you don't want to like pay somebody for their services, go get one of those free consults from your bank. I know that my guys at Chase Bank do it, and they can at least give you an idea of your outlook and where you need to be. You know, and even though I work with Cody, I've done these free consults with all kinds of guys just to double check his work, you know, make sure his numbers are right. And so I say utilize that, even if you think you're going to want to DIY it online or whatever, you know, get an idea of your outlook.
Yeah, it brings up another point. There's a minute that the way our industry's changed over time is it's gone from a things to be sold industry, right? Like where you know, back 30, 40 years ago, you'd have a branch manager give everyone the same thing and say, pick up the phone and call people, right? And you're selling the security. And it's graduated to more of a consultative, educational, fiduciary environment. And one of the things that's come along with that is you can go somewhere and say, I'm not going to put any money with you. Yeah. My money is elsewhere. I either have it with advisor A and advisor B and I want a third-party consultation, or I'm doing it myself at said firm, and I want to pay you an hourly fee, a financial plan, and you can actually go through the process with someone who's being compensated, so you're hopefully expecting a better job from them, and the output you get is not pressure to buy things. It's just a plan that gives you the information you need to then go pursue the investments that you might presumably take some pleasure in identifying yourself.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great way to go about it, 100%. So, well, thank you so much, Cody, for joining me.
glad to.
I really appreciate all the knowledge. And if anybody's watching, wants some contact info to talk to Cody, or I have other financial planners that I work with as well, just let me know. I think it's a great way to go. And then, yeah, we'll just go from there. So,
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. Have a good evening.